Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Photo Brigade Podcast. I'm Robert Kaplan, and we are live at the Adorama Event Space in New York City, and I'm with Steve Fine. I got Steve Fine with me. How you doing, Steve?
Here under duress.
Under duress. I know I've asked you a few times to be on this, and you're a hard one to get into the hot seat, and you're a bit intimidating. And I know that we're going to have to put a parental advisory on this because of your mouth, too.
Yeah, that's probably true.
That's probably true.
I'll do the best I can, and I'm actually happy to be here and happy to participate.
Awesome. Well, Steve, let's see here, Steve. I think that you and I met. I think I came back when you were at Sports Illustrated, I came in to visit the offices maybe 10 years ago before I interned at the New York Times. And I don't know, I think I was just coming in to show some work or something like that. And that was my first time meeting you. But then again, I'm sure we met at the Eddie Adams workshop. And
I think we've run into each other on the sidelines a few times.
Oh, yeah,
well,
yeah. Back when I used to shoot sports.
Right.
I used to shoot sports back when I was interning, and, everything sort of changed. I got rid of my big glass and went with the small stuff, more documentary. So, Steve, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and before we get started, I just wanted to give a couple quick shout-outs. A thank you to Adorama and their event space for hosting us here. You can check out adorama.nyc to see any of their upcoming events, and you can also check out photobrigade.com/live to watch this event live and see all of our previous events. Additionally, thank you to Canon Professional Services for their support, great organization, as well as Tenba bags and Rode microphones for these fancy mics. So with that, Steve, I want to talk a little bit about your background. Before we get into this, prolific photo editor, director of photography talk, where did you come from? And how? Where did you come from?
What planet
are you from? And what got you into the photo industry?
I actually wanted to be a writer because for most of my young life, I sat in front of a TV or went to a game and thought, what a cool job to sit at a press table and write about sports, because I loved watching sports.
Interesting, writing.
My father said, if you're going to sit and watch sports all day long, you better learn how to write, so at least you can make a living doing this, because when you turn 18, I'm throwing you out.
Uh-huh.
So when I was in high school and in college, I was a sports writer. Local newspaper where I grew up, and then the Columbia Daily Spectator at Columbia.
Okay.
I had done a couple of small freelance jobs. Well, I was a stringer for the New York Times. I was a copy boy there for a while. I got to know a few people. The sports information director at Columbia was very instrumental in helping, set me up in a couple places. And I ended up getting a job as a fact checker at People magazine back in the late 70s, when I was still in school. And if you've ever been a fact checker, again, back in the day, you really learn a lot of important skills: how to use a phone, how to ask questions, how to make sure that you don't put mistakes in the magazine. You also spend a lot of time with lawyers.
Uh-huh.
And one of the lawyers at People introduced me to her boyfriend, then husband, who was the deputy picture editor at SI.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, this is a good idea, because maybe I can learn how to write for SI.
Sports Illustrated, for those that don't.
For a few months, I submitted pieces to SI and was told by the great Peter Carey, who was one of the executive editors there, that though I could write, I would never be Frank DeFord.
Uh-huh.
And that maybe I should concentrate on being a picture editor, because I was getting pretty good at that. And I basically went to photo editing school at Sports Illustrated from 1979 up until 1983.
Baptism by fire.
Exactly.
Like just learning what it's like.
They threw me in. They gave me bags filled with little white boxes of transparencies, and I went through thousands and thousands of pictures every day, came in on my days off, not only learned football, baseball, basketball, and hockey, but also America's Cup or gymnastics or Winter Olympics or some of the obscure things, because I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know what made a good picture.
So this was before, because you ended up at the New York Times as a picture editor as well. So was this before or after?
I started working at Sports Illustrated in 1979.
Okay.
And I worked there for 4 years. And then I left in 1983 and went to the Times picture desk as the sports picture editor, but I also did a little bit of work at the Sophisticated Traveler and the New Faces edition in the Arts and Leisure section. So I kind of moved around, did a little business thing.
Right.
And then I moved on for 3 years and was Kathy Ryan's first deputy.
Oh, really?
At the Sunday Magazine
Oh,
section.
wow.
And
so she's been there that long, huh? I didn't realize she was
1988.
Been there. Wow.
Yeah. And she was a great teacher. And it got me out of sports for 3 years, which is something I needed to do to get out of that punt, pass, and kick type of mentality. 1992, Heinz Klutmeyer, longtime staff photographer at SI, became the director of photography, and he asked me to come back. So I was his deputy for 4 years, and then I was director of photography for 17.
Wow. While we're talking about this, why don't we go ahead and start this slideshow you've got going on? You have some from back in your days there, some of the photos you worked on.
This is a show that kind of spotlights the leading off section and a little bit of the portraiture that we did back when I was running the show there.
Right. So okay. So while you were there as a sports editor, what is the experience like? Because I know from experience, having been there, having seen you guys edit, having been to the office, and also watching some of the features, as you can see on my sportshooter.com, you guys went through so many photos. And to an extent, you're doing that still today with Flipboard, where you're at now. And we'll get more into Flipboard after we go through these photos and talk about your sports world. But what was it like getting into it, especially in the film days? Because now it's completely different in digital. So tell me what it's like to go through thousands upon thousands of photos and how you judge and how you find that one and don't miss it. Don't miss the main shot.
The way I'd like to think about life in the photo department at SI is that we were in competition with ESPN. I don't mean ESPN the magazine, but ESPN the network.
Uh-huh.
And so every week we had to find a way to make pictures on Saturday or Sunday that would resonate with our readers on Wednesday. As Jimmy Colton likes to say, in order for a picture to be effective, it has to be effective.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So, and our competition, we thought, was television, honestly. Because on SportsCenter, they're going to show a highlight of a certain play over and over and over again to the point where you think you were actually there.
Right.
So we needed to shoot pictures in a way that was different from TV, different from the local newspapers, different from the wires. How did we do it? Volume.
Uh-huh.
It would not be unusual for us to have at least 2 photographers at 6 college games on a Saturday afternoon in October, and then maybe 6 more games that we would cover in the NFL on Sunday. 3,000 pictures per photographer, 2 photographers per game. You do the math, it's
Goodness
like
gracious.
250,000 pictures.
And was that the same back in the film days as well?
Yeah, it was pretty heavy in the film days as well.
Because I think back when I shot film, which is a very brief portion of my career, because of I'm younger, I guess. And but I can't imagine shooting that many film.
Have you ever met John McDonough?
I actually haven't.
John McDonough puts up 14 remotes at a basketball game and he shoots every play. So for him, 5,000 frames at a basketball game, not unusual. But more to the point, back in the film days, we were also editing color negs.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Not contact sheets, not prints, okay? So I had a brilliant staff of 8 photo editors who went through the lion's share of the pictures and got it down. Let's say if somebody shot 2,000 frames at a football game, they would get it down to 100. Okay, I would often take a photographer myself because it was so much volume. Also, Jimmy Colton, who was my deputy for many years, he would go through the wires to see if there was anything out there that we missed. Also, we couldn't possibly be at every single game.
Right.
So by the end of the week, we were looking at 300,000 pictures to try to find 80 to put in the magazine.
Right.
And the cover, the leading offs, the opener to the lead stories, and then the opener to the bonus piece, which is that long read in the back, were kind of my 4-point scoring system.
Right.
Okay. very rarely did we get all 4 perfect,
Right.
because covers are covers and they're hard to,
Well, how do you choose the cover? Since we're looking at covers right now, how do you choose? Like, is it based off of like the most amazing photo of the week, or is it just the biggest story based on what's going on? If it's World Series, obviously the World Series is going to go up.
Well, yeah, I mean, an obvious event like the Super Bowl that's going to be the cover, but we would have several meetings a week to discuss what would be the big story of the week. It wasn't necessarily the best picture. I mean, among other things, it had to be vertical, okay? A lot of sports photographers shoot horizontal because they want to capture sense of place, okay? Sometimes it had a lot to do with the typography and the layout and the hardware that you have to put on a cover. Also, it has to be a clean, simple image.
Yeah.
Because it's going to sit on the newsstand and it's going to attract people,
right.
Okay? So a complicated image, some of which you see behind me, are best suited for the leading off section, which was 3 double truck spreads in the beginning that were great pictures that needed a home.
And when did that start? Because that's relatively new, isn't it?
It started in 1998.
In 98. Okay,
Yeah.
so you were there for a good chunk of time before.
Right, but we did have one page, the table of contents page, that was the best picture of the week that needed a home.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether the team won or lost, we could still make a point that said, this was a hell of a picture during such and such a game. So the covers are tricky. The covers are difficult, and it's a collaborative effort. You have a managing editor who thinks he knows what he's talking about. You have an art director who's looking at it from a different point of view.
Sure.
You have a senior editor in charge of a particular sport who's trying to give an angle or a point of view or even a statement about the story. If it's a profile or if it's a profile of an athlete and you take a portrait and it's a very serious story, you don't want them laughing on the cover because it's sending out a mixed message. So the covers were very complicated, and we had a lot of brilliant covers. We had a lot of mediocre covers.
Sure.
So my job was to provide the managing editor and the senior staff with choices so that they could pick and make it look as good as possible.
Right. So how about you mentioned the leading offs, right? And there was a transition at one point when you didn't have these, and obviously space is coveted in the magazine. So was it a difficult pitch to the managing editors or whoever it is that really control what ultimately goes into to get those spaces? I mean, I imagine no text, no ads.
I know Jimmy's out there listening, and he's probably cringing at this moment. The leading offs simply were the 25 best pictures of the week, okay? Either taken from stories that were going to appear in the magazine or from events that we shot specifically for leading off.
Right.
We were a high-risk, high-reward photo department, okay? We aimed for pictures. In other words, if we saw that it was going to snow in Green Bay and we weren't covering the Packers for whatever reason, we sent somebody to Green Bay to shoot the snow.
Okay? Get that pretty shot.
So we assigned a lot of things for leading off. We did pick up a bunch from the Wires. Wires do a very, very nice job of shooting in places that are also hard to get to. Managing editors, I worked for 5 of them.
Right.
They all had differing opinions on what was a good picture. We had one guy who asked, "What is a good picture? Is this good?" And we said, "Well, Bill, if you like it, then it's good."
Yeah.
And then we had another managing editor who said, "Don't manage the managing editor." So, he knew what he was doing. And after a while, we broke all of them down.
Right.
And we got to run pretty much what we wanted to run. And it was a beautiful, award-winning, amazing section.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I that's the one thing that's like that. Sports Illustrated is always the coveted. Like that's where you want to go to get that's where you want to get your shot if you're a sports photographer. Any sports photographer always wants.
Yes, but keep in mind it's run by pencils. Okay.
Yeah.
And pencils don't always know what they're looking at in terms of pictures.
Right. And nowadays, let's see here. You have another slideshow that you were going to show. Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and start that up.
Sure, no problem. This one is from the London Olympics.
London Olympics, okay.
Which many of us consider our finest work, because not only did we put out a magazine each week, but we put out the Sports Illustrated app.
Right.
Okay, so we had 2 photo galleries a day of 10 pictures a day. We were also feeding NBC pictures of the day, and we were feeding the Costas show, we were feeding the Today show. So I had 10 staff or freelance photographers on assignment in London. Again, our opinion was if one guy made one great picture a day, and you had 10 people out there and you had 10 great pictures, by the end of the week to put out the magazine, you had 70 great pictures.
Right.
So the object of the game was not to try to cover everything as if you were AP, Getty, or Reuters, but to try to make something special.
Right.
Okay? And through the use of remotes, through our concentration on sense of place, tears and cheers, and also trying to capture the moment, we somehow managed to figure out this formula, and the pictures were riveting, compelling, and barely needed a caption, as you can see.
Right, absolutely. That's another thing. You shouldn't need a caption for a
great
beautiful
picture
photo.
doesn't need a caption.
Exactly.
In fact, our mantra was, we're going to tell the story of sport through pictures in a narrative way with a beginning, middle, and end, okay, so that you don't need words. And one of the beautiful things about working at Flipboard right now, because we go to many, many countries in many different languages, is that the photo galleries are standalones. And yes, there is a caption in English, but it doesn't stop people from looking.
Well, that's the question. I was wanting to get your impression of the transition of the traditional media, from the transition from traditional and established media like newspapers and magazines to the new digital workflow and mobile. I mean, obviously you were doing that at Sports Illustrated. Now you've moved up, and I know we're going to talk about that more when we go into your Flipboard presentation here. But so you were there. You've been editing photos with the transition from film to digital, and then from
I go back even from black and white to color. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how about the daguerreotypes? Did you were back at those days?
No. But I do know people who were.
Right. So I mean, you've seen a lot of transition in the photo world. What's your thought on that? Is it a good thing? Do you feel are you bummed out about it? Or you I mean, obviously you're embracing it because you're in this mobile world now.
I started at Sports Illustrated and was taken under the wings of the great Walter Yost, Heinz Klutmeyer, and Bill Epridge. And one of the things that I learned is we're not going anywhere unless there's great photographers making great pictures.
Right.
When it came to cameras and or film, we were non-denominational.
Uh-huh.
I used to say that I don't care if you shot that picture on toilet paper, if I could manage to run it, okay, and it would look great as a double truck in the magazine or the newspaper when I was at the New York Times, then I was fine. So I never really cared much about which film or what camera, just make me a great picture.
Uh-huh.
The processing part of film was laborious.
Right.
The neck pain and eye strain of literally being hunched over a light box
right.
for hours and hours and hours, bombing through, as I said, color negs,
uh-huh.
okay, was difficult. I'm not saying we missed pictures. We rarely missed any pictures. We had many sets of eyes going through stuff, and if we needed to go back, we went back. I think the problem now is that, as Howard Schatz said to me a few weeks ago, at a talk he was giving about his book, about his retrospective, everyone needs an editor.
Right.
And I think part of the problem right now, especially since I'm knee-deep in the wires every single day, is that there's just too much stuff out there, and there's too much garbage out there.
Yeah.
It's easy to put it out there because there's no hand holding, okay?
Right.
I mean, the pictures are shot on a card. The card goes in. You pick 20, you pick 30, you move them out on the wire. You got hundreds of photographers around the world on the wires doing that kind of thing. It's
right.
just too many pictures, and
right.
there's too many bad pictures out there.
Right.
The other thing that's changed in the sports photo business is access. And SI, we had great access because we were SI.
Right.
Okay. Well, now everybody has access, which means nobody has access because everybody's shooting the same thing.
Right.
So you're getting a lot of people at the finish line all shooting very similar type stuff. So again, the name of the game was to try to move away from what everybody is just making. And I think sports photographers at this moment are a little bit lazy. They're making the same pictures over
right.
and over and over again, especially in sports. News, a whole nother animal. And my respect for the news photographers out there right now who are covering the human condition and wars and tsunamis and volcanoes and what have you, my respect for them goes up every single day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned, there's a lot of crap out there. People are kind of stagnant doing the same stuff. That's where I believe like the Sports Illustrated photographers, and then there's also some really amazing wire photographers out there, and some other staffers as well throughout the media who go above and beyond. Who are the standout, the top sports photographers. What is it that makes the top sports photographer the top sports photographer? Is it the anticipation, the knowledge of the sport, the how did you say, a high risk, high reward attitude? You talked about putting up 13 remotes at a game. Like, when did that come up? Like, when did that start, the whole remotes? I know they were doing it back in the day, but now they're doing so many more with wireless and...
The remotes were there when I started working there in the early 80s. But again, it's... The photographers who were making brilliant pictures, first of all, have separated themselves from the pack.
Right.
Number two, they have done their homework.
Right.
I just wrote a foreword to a book that Bob Martin is putting out, of his great stuff.
Cool.
London-based photographer, was a staffer for me for 12 years. Was a photo chief in London.
Yeah, I just met him.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal photographer. And I've been thinking about this for a week now. It's preparation. It's not wanting to make the same picture again. It's knowing what's been shot and is out there that you don't want to repeat,
right,
and you want to top it.
Right.
And then there's a little bit of luck involved, okay?
Sure.
You set up cameras and, a guy, makes a shot in basketball or scores a goal in soccer or something like that. And you just have to be in the right place at the right time.
Right.
Why is Walter Yost, the best sports photographer that ever lived?
Right.
Because somehow he was a magnet for the ball.
Right.
Okay? But he also saw things in a tableau.
Right.
So he, and Bob, who carried on the tradition from Heinz, the greatest event photographer ever, and Walter, who took sports photography to an art form. Bob comes along and he learns how to just put sense of place, tears and cheers, the magic moment, the great light, sometimes shadows,
right,
all in one place. And then with a little bit of luck, it all comes together in one frame. The other thing is, Sports Illustrated didn't have to cover every touchdown, every goal in hockey.
Right.
We needed to make great plays so people would go ooh and ah on Wednesday when the magazine came out. So the ooh ah factor is what we were looking for. Now, not everybody has that luxury. Not everybody can send 7 photographers to a track meet.
Sure.
And throw 99% of the stuff away.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we played on the top of the mountain where it snows all the time, but we also respected the top of that mountain, and we stood on those who went before us.
Right.
Okay. Something that Brian Lanker taught me once upon a time. We didn't invent this. All we can do is keep the ball in the air and try to make it better.
Before we move on to Flipboard, your sort of current job and digital media, I wanted to ask about regarding Sports Illustrated. There's been a lot of like you said, there was a lot of resources thrown at events all the time, and it seems nowadays there's a lot less of that. It seems that it's a lot more wire or reliance on. Would you say that?
I believe the money tree was cut down recently.
Yes.
Sometime around February of 2013, I'm offering.
Yeah.
So
do you think that's more to do with like just the revenue that's coming in from ads and print dying, or or that's a loaded? I think that might be a loaded one.
This is where I get up and knock the table over.
Okay.
Yes, advertising is down, and the cost of digital advertising per ad is much lower than a printed page in Sports Illustrated or the New York Times. So more inexpensive ads, less revenue coming in. They can't afford to have staff photographers anymore. They've cut back on editors, and they're relying more on the wires. There are some people who think that an SI guy standing next to a Getty guy is making the same picture. No disrespect to the Getty guy, but I don't agree with that statement. And if you have people in charge who don't respect or understand why SI was so great, then you can end up in a situation where it all starts to look the same.
I see. All right. Well, and you know, also to an extent, I should bring up there are so many photographers out there, kind of, you know, working for low wages and putting their pictures out there and making them sort of readily available.
Everybody has to start somewhere.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how many times we both get asked, if you're a young photographer just out of school and you've got talent, how do you get started?
Yeah.
And, you know, in a lighter moment, I say, you know, go back to school and learn how to code, because coders are the superstars now. I've learned that at Flipboard. You have to start.
Yeah.
You have to be a stringer. You got to work for, you know, USA Today Images. You got to work for Getty. You got to work for AP. You got to work for the local newspaper. And you're going to work for, you know, maybe $75 a day, which is unfortunate because the equipment alone,
so far outweighs
what you're being paid that it's a huge problem. I was lucky, and a number of friends of mine, Michael O'Neill, Nigel Parry, Walter, we have lunch, we have dinner, we talk about the golden age of photography and how lucky we were to have been in that period.
Yeah.
Because right now, I don't know. I mean, I believe that the world needs editors, okay, because there's so much mediocre stuff being put out there. But I don't know if people are hiring. I don't know. It's really a hard business right now.
It is.
And it's
difficult.
It's sad. And the other problem is everyone's a photographer because of, you know, smartphones.
Right.
Okay. And the problem is that's not really true. Okay. What's interesting is if you look at certain Instagram feeds. Okay, like for example mine. Okay. I pick up mostly from professional photographers, agencies, newspapers, photo editors, former lighting assistants, okay, but guys who are professionals, okay? And then I curate a magazine called Instagram Gems at Flipboard.
Why don't we load up that PowerPoint that you had for Flipboard?
Good idea.
And that way we have some visuals.
Right. Keep in mind, I'm pretty much out of the sports business, which is nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Different, yeah.
And in the news and feature business, which I am loving, okay? And I am so thankful to be working at Flipboard because I have an opportunity to put stuff out there that I like without a whole set of people, you know, checking me, you know, every day. And I also have just the world's greatest partner in Gary Hirshhorn, photographer, photo editor, words that are not usually mentioned in the same breath.
Well, Gary was on the podcast, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 back, and he's an amazing photographer. His Instagram feed alone is incredible.
He's a gem in and of himself. So getting back to that point, people are putting stuff out on Instagram and they think they're a photographer, okay? And then you look at the professionals who are walking down the street shooting some sort of, you know, Gary Winogrand inspired, you know, street scene, and you can see the difference. They have an eye.
And these are photos, I should mention, that you've curated for
Flipboard, mostly for a magazine that I put out once a week called Pictures of the Week. It runs in a magazine called Photos of the Week, and you can find it on the photo desk.
Now, when we say magazines, we're going to go through on his iPad here in a minute, but these are digital magazines. We're not talking real magazines anymore. Right. Flipboard is a service that you can kind of curate your own magazines and contribute to magazines and build networks.
That's completely correct. And what Gary and I do is we curate from the wires. We have you know, agreements, partnerships with them, and we build 3 to 4 galleries a day. Yesterday, for example, we did Donald Trump goes to Scotland for the golf tournament. We did something on celebrities. We did something on MH370. In other words, so it's whatever is newsy of that day. We go in and do a gallery of 20 pictures, let's say, and we put them up. And we're averaging on a really good day, we've been close to 300,000 entries or views. Okay, and on a slow day, it's around 90 or 100,000. So people are looking. Flipboard gets somewhere around 10 million daily active users, and we are up to now 70 million monthly active users. And to be an active user, you have to go in 4 times. Okay, and what I mean by in, not just like open it, but you have to like actually
start
flip through something.
And so the flipping part is kind of you're swiping up or down or side to side depending on what device you're using.
Yes.
And that's why they call it Flipboard.
Yes.
So getting literal here.
So instead of scrolling your...
It's not scroll board.
No, it's flipping.
You flip the pages on the digital.
Yes.
So you mentioned you're going through wire photos, which is mainly what these are, right?
These are completely
These are all wire photos.
Yes.
Is it possible for, say, a photographer to submit or have you guys feature them in some capacity?
At this moment, we're not. Yes. In a magazine, in a photo magazine that Gary and I curate, called The Shot, which is the destination for all things photographic on Flipboard. And we'll get to that in a minute because it has 8 different magazines within one larger magazine that we call a franchise.
And I should mention Photo Brigade also. We've recently started that, and we have a magazine with subcategories.
You have your own... that's right. You have your own magazine, as well as you're a co-contributor to Inside Photography, which is where all the good dope is about what's happening in the photo industry. So Inside Photography lives inside The Shot, and then each week we spotlight a photographer who's done some amazing picture somewhere, and he writes 5-6 paragraphs on how'd you make that picture.
Got it.
And we do a little bio on him, and and then we put together a section called the Selects, which is outtakes from the shoot or outtakes from his portfolio to kind of give you a well-rounded view of what this guy's about. Now, getting back to the galleries, we're not doing that much original content, although certainly Gary and I would like to, okay? We have done a couple of branded magazines where we have shot for it. As far as submitting for these galleries, we're respecting the agreements that we have with the wires, and we'll keep it to that. However, you could submit your stuff to us, and if it's really, really good, like as has happened recently with a couple of landscape and wilderness photographers, then we'll do a feature on you.
And how do you submit?
Email. Yeah.
Someone's email?
Or Gary, who is the single greatest surfer of all things on the interweb.
He'll find you.
If there's a great picture out there, he'll find you. Exactly.
All right.
So, and he sees stuff on Instagram. He sees stuff on Facebook. He has, he's so connected in the social media world that he's an invaluable, unbelievable partner.
Right. We're going to turn your iPad on here in a minute, and I don't think you need to do anything at the moment, but he's working on it here.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you witnessed so much history in person when you were in the sports world. Do you feel is your work now you're kind of based here all the time, or do you travel a lot? Well, it's Palo Alto. You travel a lot to the West Coast.
Headquarters is out there. Yeah.
Okay, and I mean, do you miss the more, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Glamorous.
The more glamorous travel. Do you miss that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I miss covering events. I miss setting them up. I miss having a team of photographers.
So now we have Flipboard, and you can just work off of here, and they'll put it up on the screen.
So this is the magazine that I was discussing before, called The Shot, and these are all the categories that we have. So, for example, this week's spotlight is on Jay Patel, who is a big-time noted photo blogger out there and photographer of wilderness and landscape photographies. And if you go in, you can see we have the picture, and he describes how he made it and where he was and why. We have a little bit of a bio on him.
Right.
And then we have his selects. And again, if you tap in, there's a lot of tapping, swiping, flipping. There's a lot of things that go on with Flipboard.
And we're on a slow internet connection, so that's
okay. And then you get to see the rest of Jay's
That's
pictures.
Beautiful. Yeah,
they're great, right? And then what we introduced this week, at the end of this, is a... Whoops, one too many. All right, so Photos of the Week, which is where I do, the wrap-up of the pictures. The Photo Desk galleries, those are the individual daily galleries that we do. Flipboard Picks, which is if we do something really good. Right. And the fabulous news editor that we work for back in Palo Alto deems it worthy. She puts it in. This is the staff-generated best of the best. Okay,
Got it.
And you can see my Instagram feed, my Instagram gems. You can see news, et cetera, et cetera. Let's try the shot here. There we go. Okay. And again, so after we get through with the spotlight, we have a category called Inside Photography that I mentioned before, which has all the good inside dope that's going on in the photo world. We have a category called Today's Best Pictures, We have a how-to section, which you can see. And we have a gear market, okay, which, shout out to Adorama. Let's pray this works, right? Okay, if you go in, perfect. You not only see what Adorama is selling, but you also get the price tag, and if you go into the price tag, you can actually buy the camera.
Yeah, how about that?
So, we've been experimenting a little bit with some e-commerce there as well, all right?
And so the goal, I mean, obviously for you at Flipboard is to generate beautiful content for the users to continue using Flipboard.
Right, but we're also trying to gather the photo influencers who are out there and make a community so that Photo Brigade shares with Photo District News shares with Photo Shelter Shelter shares with Joe McNally at Nikon, shares with, Scott Kelby at Canon, and so that we want to put everybody who has something to say about photography and great pictures all in one place,
right.
Okay, so that everybody comes to the shot to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Yes. The thing about Flipboard is we're aggregators, okay?
Right.
There's not, what we consider original content is original curation.
Right.
Okay. And yes, you can find stuff on the New York Times app that you won't find here.
Right.
But what we're doing is getting you the best of content out there so that we can feed and fuel your passion, okay?
Right.
And if you're passionate about photography, then other than listening to this podcast,
right.
then you should come and sign up for Flipboard, which is free.
Right.
Start an account, okay? And then start picking among the 34,000 topics that make your life, whether it's travel, photography, food, sports, whatever. And then we learn your tendencies, and we customize the content that we're sending to your specific home feed, okay? So you can see everything that you care about.
It really is interesting because when I first got on it, I thought, okay, I'm getting on this for photography. I'm going to look through this, and I want to get my Photo Brigade on there. I want to make sure I'm sharing everything. And when I went through, it kind of gives you this option to kind of pick topics that you're interested in. And, one of the topics I'm interested in beyond photography is space. So I clicked on space, and now when I go to my main page, I mean, the first time I opened it, I found like 5 articles that was just like mind-blowing that I would probably never found because it knew that I wanted to know about space. So it really is a cool tool if you're looking
absolutely awesome
looking
app
to consume content that's already out there. And now also as a photographer, I think of things like this is a bit of social media as well, because you can collect followers, and that's a valuable tool for any photographer, so that you can share your own work and get it out there.
Exactly. The sharing concept is another thing. You want to tell your legion of followers what you've learned that they might not have found themselves.
Right.
Okay. So this is the place where all great content lives, and also can be shareable every which way. We're also on every device known to man. Okay, iOS and Android. Okay, and as I said before, we go to 50 countries around the world in 10 different languages or something to that effect.
Right.
And the real beauty of this, and this is the answer to the question from 20 minutes ago, is that Gary and I can build a gallery off the wires in a half an hour.
Right.
And then we have a tool built by the amazing Gene Tsai, who is the man who invented the flip. He is employee number 1 at Flipboard, and he is just about the smartest guy on this planet, okay? If you're going to be in the tech world, you need a coder. You need an engineer, you need a designer, you need to know how to make this work. We push a button off Gene's tool, and it loads in 30 seconds.
Wow, yeah.
I do believe if I had met Gene several years ago, I could have straightened out SI.com, and we would have still all be, and the band The Cowboys and I would still be working there.
Gotcha. I'm excited because we've started our magazine, and this is something. So if you're running a blog, like a faux blogger out there has got their magazine, they've been doing it for much longer than we have, and they've got tens of thousands of subscribers already to it. And it's one of those things where you got to get on to a platform in order to get those followers.
Right.
You got to play. If you make it, they will come. Sort of deal.
It's exactly what our boss Mike McHugh, the owner of Flipboard, says. He says, we want to drive traffic to you, and we want you to drive traffic back to us.
Right.
And though we're still considered a startup, and we are building an audience slowly, I have something like 700,000 people looking at Instagram gems on and off, okay? And we are slowly growing the shot as well. I mean, I think we're up to about 40,000, maybe 50,000 viewers.
Right.
So, I mean, it's... I think if you're interested in photography, that's the only place you should really be going, because it has the best of everybody else's stuff out there.
Right, right. What's the future? What's the future of Flipboard?
You mean today when I get home?
No. Well, I mean, like, do you like? I mean, you're doing your thing now. Is there anything that you can comment on? You know, where things are going? I mean, obviously, you're looking at it from a photo perspective. Yeah.
In this world, simply taking out an ad on a digital product is not enough. And I think that the world of branded magazines and promoted items and things where we're working with a company, for example, last year, Lexus, who's one of our key advertisers, wanted to do something on street photography, okay, as part of a magazine that they curate on, the kinds of people they would like to have buy or drive,
Right.
Lexuses.
I'm going to pull up the Photo Brigade while you're talking.
Please do. So we went out, and Nigel Perry made a set of great pictures, street-style photography of men's fashion, and it was a huge hit, both within the Lexus world, but also within the Flipboard world, because people came and saw that kind of thing. So I think what we need to be doing is more of that, shooting for sponsors, with sponsors, okay? I realize that I've crossed a line between church and state and journalism and things like that, but you know what? This is not a hobby, this is a business. And I think working with these top elite brands, okay, to create original photography that they would like to use, well, I mean, way back when at SI in 1979, when I wanted to learn a little bit more about, the minor sports, I worked on something called an advertorial. Okay,
advertorial,
right. And somebody wanted to make an 8-page insert in Sports Illustrated of great sailing pictures, and that's how I learned about sailing. I went through the files and I put it together. Okay, and boom, we ran this thing for some major shipbuilding or rain gear or I don't know, whatever the company was. Okay,
Right.
It doesn't matter. The point is, I don't think we're breaking any new ground here. I think we're taking it to a new level. And I think that this is where the future is going to be if we're going to keep these things alive.
Right.
Okay. The print world is dying every minute, for which I feel very sad. Okay, but we at Flipboard are working on a business model that I think will be very productive and very powerful as we go forward.
Very interesting. So I've been having trouble bringing it up because it's under your account, because I'm used to looking at from my account. But anyways, what's really cool is you can go through. I'm looking through Inside Photography, and you were looking at it from a different perspective. But you can go through and just sort of flip through and see snippets of this is from the Flowblographer, shot by the Picture Desk, and all sorts of different contributors here, and it really comes out nicely. You can get a quick little read, figure out what the story is about before even clicking on it.
Also, as I said, the amazing Gary Hirshhorn updates this thing like twice an hour.
Yeah.
So if you haven't posted anything this morning, you've fallen to the bottom a little bit. But nevertheless, this is how it works. And
so here's Steve Huff here. Yeah, we'll open him up. Yeah.
Open him up and see what we get. And then we get Steve Huff, magazine.
Steve Huff magazine. So you can have your own magazine. Like this is your opportunity to build, finally build your own magazine. Blogging is, kind of always been people's magazines at one point, right? You can still keep blogging, but loading your link. All you got to do is blog and then load your links into Flipboard, and it'll turn it into little magazines. So each one of these little things, all Steve did was just put a link in here.
Yes. Oh, well, he actually flipped with the little flip it button, okay?
Right.
Which is the plus that you see here, okay? From his website, he flipped it into his magazine on Flipboard.
So we can use your account and say, let's say you want to share this one. You can then add it to. I'm not going to because that's a little bit administrative.
Don't touch my stuff.
But I could flip this into any of those other
exactly
magazines that you've created, which is really really pretty neat.
Yep.
Well, awesome. Flipboard's really cool. We're working on Photo Brigade. We're gonna keep adding more content. We're gonna get more contributors to our our board. We're going to keep contributing to the picture desk or to Inside Photography as well, of course. Yeah. Is there anything else that we should mention about Flipboard that we haven't kind of gone over?
Just that the Daily Edition, which is our news briefing that comes out every morning but is updated again sometimes during the day, is a brilliant way to spend 15-20 minutes getting the top news, sports, politics, celebrities. There's a fun little... you know what? I think I can find Photo Brigade if we go deep enough here. Like I said, I'm on Gary's site now, so let me know if we get there.
Yeah, we'll have to look for it. I'm realizing that I haven't put something up in a...
If you haven't put something up in a while, it's going to be tricky to find.
Yeah, it might be tricky to find.
But these are the magazines that you were referring to. You know, Loop 35, The Photographer, Mirrorless, et cetera,
right.
Lens Culture, all sorts of things there.
Right.
And yours would appear that way.
Yeah, so mine appears... I have a couple of different magazines within the magazines, or sections within the magazines. One of them is the podcast, so you can go and you can subscribe just to the podcast if you want to know the latest podcast. Click on it, it'll bring you to our blog post about it. You can even then play the YouTube video from there. And what's cool is that what I really like about it is that it's not just people reading it on your, it's not like you're stealing the content. It's you're putting it up there. I'm contributing it, obviously, and then people click on it, and it brings you right back to your own site.
Yeah. We're not. All of this stuff exists.
Right.
What we've done is put it into one place for you to find.
Right.
And we've customized it so that if you're interested in, I think, find yourself down there. If you're interested in something or you're passionate about, rock climbing or, chicken recipes, okay, that's in there too. And it learns.
Right.
Okay, the algorithm, okay, knows who you are. Now, it also gives you an opportunity, like, for example, when I first started working there, I said, well, the reason I love The New Yorker, which recently, yesterday, 2 days ago, came on as a publishing partner, okay? We have hundreds of publishing partners, anywhere from The Guardian and the BBC to CNN and the LA Times and Washington Post, et cetera. The reason I love The New Yorker is because sometimes there's a story about dinosaur bones that are found in Africa. Now, in my profile, I'm not interested in dinosaurs or bones, okay? But the Flipboard gives you an opportunity to browse, okay, through, like I said, 34,000 topics. And if you can get lost in this rabbit hole for hours and wonder what happened to your life and why dinner just got burned, okay? So it is an incredible resource for all the great content that is available out there, and we have brilliant curators all around the world. This is 24/7 situation, who are out there just skimming the best of the best. I mean, somewhere along the line, as I said, Howard told me, okay, everyone needs an editor, so we are your personal editor, okay, at Flipboard.
Yeah.
And I just, like I said, there's two kinds of people in this world: those who've not heard about it and don't know it, and those who use it every day.
Right.
And what we're trying to do is get more of those people who don't know about it on board, because we think. I mean, I was at a port tasting in Lisbon last week. Yeah, right. Okay, and people of my age, okay, were sitting next to me, and this woman says. And her husband was sitting, okay, and this woman says, "Flipboard, you work at Flipboard? Oh my God, it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen." And the husband said, "What are you talking about?"
What are you talking about?
Exactly.
What is this app you talk about?
Right. Yeah. So that's what we need to get. We need to get the word out, okay, that this thing is pretty damn cool. And of course, if we haven't said this thing in this term, it has all the social media.
All that attached,
weapons that you need to, tell everybody why your life is so important.
We won't get into that, right?
Yeah.
Well, awesome, Steve. I think that we did a good job explaining this. Unfortunately, the internet here at the moment, because we're live streaming, is not going so well, so I can't show you my Photo Brigade magazine. But I really appreciate you coming and sort of explaining this sort of new world of digital media and sort of where things are going. Before we go, though, do you have, like, you were mentioning your Instagram. You have a personal Instagram, like, we always want to shout out the social media so people can follow you. Obviously, they can follow Flipboard at Flipboard. Sure. And download the app. But how about, like...
This is sort of the reverse of what we do when we do the bio in Spotlight.
Yeah.
We list all the links of how you can find somebody.
Right.
I don't want anyone to ever find me, but if need be, if for some reason you want to see who I'm watching and why, actually, you should really be looking at Gary Hirshhorn's Instagram feed, because his pictures are amazing. But the feed that I pull in is just under my name, Steve Fine.
Steve Fine.
Okay, I am on Twitter, but I don't tweet. And forget about Facebook, because
I was told to avoid that conversation.
good call.
And I'm surprised you haven't said one curse word yet. I'm pretty impressed with you.
I'm on good behavior here.
Yeah. Okay, so Steve Fine on Flipboard. Check out all of what they're curating. Steve, thank you so much for being on the show. And yeah, maybe we'll have you on. Maybe we'll have you and Gary, and we'll do something at the offices. I think it'd be fun to.
That'd be hilarious.
It'd be hilarious
Because we are completely the odd couple.
That's true.
He's all Android. I'm all iOS. He likes this. I like that. We don't agree on so many things, but we are the perfect team to work together on this app.
I'm thinking we should do some sort of podcast or some sort of event in that little cozy area with those cute couches and everything that you guys
Where
have
the Wonder Factory used to live, which helped drive the first app that we made for the London Olympics. And so yeah, it would be nice to do that.
Very cool.
Okay.
Steve, thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone. And before we go, I just want to say thanks again to Adorama and their event space, adorama.nyc. If you want to check it out, photobrigade.com/live to check out all of our events. Thanks again to Canon and to Rode Microphone and Tenba Bags. We'll see you all again next time.